Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. I want to thank you for taking your time out of your day to have our webinar with us today. We are going to do Made to Manage tips and tricks. This is all of our contact information here. If you guys have any questions after the event, you can feel free to contact any one of us here, Jim Castellano, the president and owner.
Jess, we're only seeing the event will start shortly.
Sorry.
No worries. Sorry, everybody.
There we go.
There we
Now
go.
you see the contact screen. So, and then for Made to Manage, you can contact Jim Cooey. If you guys are looking to maybe switch up your ERP, HR, payroll, time and attendance, you can contact Jim McCormick. And then if anybody is thinking about document management, you can contact Brendan. I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Jim Castellano so we can do a quick intro before we dive into today's subjects.
Thanks, Jess. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Give me 1 second. And let me change it over to my screen. And let me put this here. And Jess, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending where everyone's at. I have to first say thank you to everybody of our customers that are here. We have a large crowd today. We have 40-some customers on today. So I have to thank our team. I'm going to show a screen in a second that will show our team to everybody. But we are here today for our Made to Manage user group. I just want to have some house cleaning things I wanted to address to our customers and to our staff, things like that first. So I have 10 minutes. So I will get started now with what I want to at least talk about. So for introductions, and at least a little bit of our history. So for some of you who don't know, I started the company in March of 2003. So we've now been in business for 22 years. So I have to thank my team and our customers because we would not be who we are today if it wasn't for all of you. So thank you so much. Our core products. So I first got started years ago doing human resource and payroll. And I was a business partner, for some of you who don't know, I was a business partner with Made to Manage exclusively. And then eventually later with Consona, with Intuitive, and then eventually AppTeam. And then we started around 13 years ago, we started our ERP division with Made to Manage and Intuitive. So I have to thank Gary Surdy, who's on, and Jim Cooey, who runs our Made to Manage. And also some of you would remember Brian Tognoni, who was here, helped us get started with the Made to Manage side. We also have customers who want to switch over from maybe Made to Manage or Intuitive later down the road that we also show. We'll have Jim McCormick coming on in a little bit just to talk a little bit about Acumatica. We also do time and attendance. So any of you who want to do time clocks or maybe PCs to track time and attendance, we do that. And we also do document management. I'll have Brendan James talk for like 5 minutes on our document management and how it can integrate with Made to Manage and Intuitive and Acumatica. We have customers in over 42 states now and in Canada. So we do have some clients here today from Canada also. So I thank you up above. We have over 20 consultants nationwide on the Made to Manage and Intuitive side. And you'll see some of those in just a moment. And so to let you know, we have way over 250 years of combined experience with all of our consultants that I'm honored to have as our team. They're like family to us. So I thank all of you that are here now and ones that aren't on with us today. So if everyone can see, here's our team that we have for Made to Manage. Some of them will be on today, some of them will not. But this is what we our staff that we have on our Made to Manage side. We had a meeting last week, a Intuitive user group meeting. So I have to thank Gary, he's on here today. That went really well. We had around 30 different companies on last week with the Intuitive side, which had a really good turnout for that. So I have some things I do want to talk about. Before I do that, I want to at least give credit to some of our staff members here. You can see our next one. Sorry, it came off. Let me move down to the next one. Can you guys see my screen? It's not changing.
No, I still see the one that has your picture
There,
and Jimmy and
there we go. Did it switch now?
yes.
They're perfect. So we also have other team members on here also that I wanted to give credit to. So we have additional products. So we have Jim McCormick, we have Brennan James, we have Joseph, we have Deep, Jessica, who's on here, as you can see, Sam Algosa. A lot of you got calls from Sam. So I have to thank Sam also for bringing a lot of our customers to this user group. There's a couple of things. One I wanted to talk about is we need ideas from you, the customers. So remember this. So we try to do this twice a year. Okay, so I need ideas from all of you. So if you can please get a hold of Jimmy, your account manager, or Jessica, give them ideas of what you might want to see. Remember, these are free. So if you want to see something like today, we're doing tips and tricks, we're doing a whole bunch of the other things. If you want to see other things that you are interested in, let us know so we can add it into our user group meeting when we have one in October. Also, since it's free, if you have other employees at your organization that you want to have them dial in, have them dial in. Send them the request, or they can go register online, and they can be on these calls also. No problem there. Some of the things I want to talk about is hosted sites. So AppTeam has been trying to push their hosted versus their web version. We have had some customers move over to the hosted and or web, and they're not happy with it at all. And so I think the slowness of the software, things like that, is what they're experiencing. So I'm glad that most of you have it hosted in-house by yourselves. If you are considering wanting to eventually host it, we have options for that too, and that will be on some of our different things here. As you can see, our partners, we have MindSite that can actually host it for you, and you own your data. Remember this, we also support customers who are on maintenance and who are off maintenance. So it's really up to you. A lot of the customers have come off maintenance in the last year or so because AppTeam has come out saying, hey, if you don't move up to their hosted or their cloud version, we're going to raise you by 30%. And so we've had a lot of customers who said, hey, PeopleSense, we'd rather just use you and not have to pay our maintenance. So we are always here for you no matter what. Some of the other services that we do offer, we also do customizations. So any of you that want customizations, we can help you with that. We can also help with business process evaluation. So if you want someone to come on site and evaluate your system and do a business process evaluation from beginning to end, we do a 16 to 30 page write-up on that. So if you are interested in any of those, please talk to Jim Cooey, and he can at least give you information about that and talk to you about those services. One of the things I did want to talk about for some of you who might not know and who've not been out there, so on our PeopleSense ERP website, so www.peoplesenseerp.com, if you go out to our website, up in the right-hand corner, if you've never done it before, we have a help desk. You can always type in information on the help desk to ask questions. If you have anything that you need help with, we normally get back to you within an hour. Okay? I always joke and tease. I always say we're the anti-app team. We get back to you within an hour. We have it in our agreement that it's 24 hours, up to 24, but normally it's within an hour. We also take priority too, in the sense of if you are down and you have a ransomware or something like that, we have customers on here who've been ransomware, we normally respond within the hour, and we are on that right away. Thank you to our team of Ken, Susan, and a lot of our staff. So I have to thank you. Also, I need to know from all of you, what are your pain points? So if you have pain points with your system now that you're having issues with, if something's not working, let us know. I love having conversations with our customers, let them know that I'm a part of this, and I want to know what issues that you're having. If it's with our team, whether it's with the software, anything, we want to make things right and make sure things are working well for you and getting the best out of your system that we can. So please let us know either way. Please get a hold of Jimmy or get a hold of Jess. Also, one of the things I did want to talk to you about is We also have this recording that we're doing today. It will be available. Normally, Jess will try to have it ready for all of you on our website by Friday. So Intuitive has been out there, Jess, since last Friday. Is that true? I think you're on there.
Yes, Intuitive is up. The recording is up and ready to go.
Perfect. And so this one should hopefully be ready by, I would say, next week, this week, Friday. It takes a while just for her to get rid of little things that are in between. If we're talking amongst ourselves, things like that, she cleans it up for you a little bit and then puts it out there. Okay. Real quick, just some cleanup. So we have a lot of our partners, as you can see on our screen. So if you want to know about any of these, let us know. Let Jimmy know so we can talk to you about anything and everything. There's even more out there, so you can go out there. I'm not trying to upsell you or oversell you or for anything like that. I just want you to know that you have options for things that you might want to know about. I'll move to the next one. Here's our schedule for today. So if everyone can see that, this is our schedule. I'm almost done. I'll push it over to Jim McCormick. Jess will give him rights. He'll talk about the Acumatica for 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, and then he'll send over to Brendan James. He'll have 5 minutes, and then we will go over to our tips and tricks with Ray, and then we go over to with Ken Van Severen, and then we have Ken, Susan, and Ray for any questions. At the bottom, as you can see, there's Jim Cooey's. I spelled it wrong. It's the end. Yes, my fault. I apologize. People Sense. Please go to Jim Cooey at People Sense, not the way I spelled it. And also you have Jessica Canellis. So I also do have to say this. I have to thank Apteam. Without Apteam, hey, we wouldn't have all the business we have for great customers like you. So I have to thank you, the customers, and my staff. Thank you so much. I will then send it back over to Jess. Jess, I'll have you send it back over to Jim McCormick and so on. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to talking to all of you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I think Jim McCormick is just going to talk, and I have all of our contact info up here with everyone's correct spelling of their emails.
Okay, thanks, Jess and Jim. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning. I'm Jim McCormick. I'm the sales executive with PeopleSense, covering our HR payroll and also our Acumatica ERP. As Jim mentioned, one of the things that Apteam's been doing is pushing customers to go to the cloud by increasing their maintenance. We don't think that's a real good policy, and as a result, a lot of customers, many of you included, have been stopping the maintenance and support with Apteam and going with what you have. We also offer another solution, and we've had a number of customers that have migrated over to it, and that's Acumatica. Acumatica, kind of in a nutshell, is a cloud-based ERP solution that was designed in the cloud and currently has over 10,000 customers globally. They started in 2008 with a focus on the needs of the small mid-market business to drive innovations and help them grow. Because of when they started in 2008, that's part of why they developed the system as a cloud solution. Having said that, there are ways that it can also be done on-premise for those who want to keep it as an on-premise subscription solution, and we can talk about that separately. A couple of other unique things about Acumatica is they've taken a different approach on the licensing. As you know, with Made to Manage, the licensing is based on the number of users, and they charge you accordingly. Acumatica turned around and said, we're not going to do that. We're going to let everybody who needs access to the software to use it. So they give you unlimited licensing. They look at the resources that you need, and they give you unlimited user licenses. So not only the accounting or the finance people, operations people looking at it, but if you've got people on the production floor that need to access systems for whatever reason, for entering stages of work or transferring things or job costing, that can all be handled within Acumatica. The other thing that Acumatica does that is pretty unusual in the industry is they rely strictly on channel partners like PeopleSense for their sales, rather than trying to build out a large national sales organization. So PeopleSense is a channel partner or a reseller partner. We focus on the sales and the implementation of the solution. So this is a big reason why Jim, about 3 years ago, decided to look at and sign on with Acumatica. From a PeopleSense point of view and a customer point of view, it's also a major advantage to our customers like you who are on Made to Manage, or those last week that we spoke to that were on Intuitive, in that PeopleSense knows the Made to Manage solution, knows your business, knows you, which helps with the transition to Acumatica. So we can keep things a lot smoother. We're not trying to guess or reinvent the wheel or throw a lot of things out there that can result in excess time for implementation and longer times. We know the system, and we can give you that white glove service at a very reasonable cost. So that's really kind of the nutshell in here. So I can pass things over to Brendan. But for additional information, you have my contact information up there, Jim McCormick at peoplesense.net. So please reach out to me directly. If you contact through the office, they know how to find me pretty quickly, but email is a great way to get me. Love to talk to you about what you're doing now and how we can help you in looking at options beyond Made to Manage, especially if you've been off support for a while and looking for a new solution. So Brendan, I'll pass things over to you.
Yeah, and Jess, if you can just allow me to share my screen.
Yep, I gotcha.
There we go. All right, just a moment here. Okay, so what we are going to be talking about is M-Files, and essentially, well, what we do is, you know how a lot of companies really struggle to manage all of their data and their processes, like processing an invoice, which might cause some business risk or even employees to be inefficient? Well, what we do is we help companies like that be able to find all of their information, even in other repositories like Made to Manage or your CRM, in seconds, while ensuring that you are always working with the correct and most up-to-date information. On top of that, we incorporate your company's processes to streamline them or even automate where possible. Let me just get my laser pointer here real quick. So the first thing to point out is M-Files is a purely metadata-driven platform, and M-Files is actually the only purely metadata-driven platform in the enterprise content management or the document management space. And really quick, metadata is just drop-downs or descriptions, right? If you have a contract with another company, metadata would be the date, the customer, the contact of the customer, or what type of contract it is. And the reason that is important is, well, I'm sure you guys all remember the manila file folders. They've caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. And it really begs the question, we're in the new age of technology. Why are other digital platforms still using these manila folders, right? Why are they still using a folder system? We often see people who finally make the decision to go to a document management system and then run into much of the same problems they had doing things through their file explorer on their PC. So right back into metadata, right? Metadata is data that describes data, fancy way of saying keywords, description tags, values. This is just a quick thought thing, right? We use it every single day. This is an example of an Amazon search. First, we search up shoes. We have over 60,000 results. Then we refine it, Nike shoes, 20,000, and we keep refining it because we know exactly what we're looking for. And then we only get down to 200 results, all of those which were the shoes that I was looking for. But it just goes to show that with M-Files, you're searching for what it is, not where it is, like in a folder system. So this is just a quick look at what our search looks like, right? You could do a full search and it'll be the first thing to pop up. Or we have facet search, which is, let's say we only look up invoice, then we have these dynamic filter boxes. I know it's in the year 2024, click that, okay, only 3 companies show up, click that one company, and now I'm looking for the document of that one company. Real quick, this is our metadata card. This is essentially what you fill out when you store something in M-Files, and it's just filling out what the document is, just giving it all descriptions, and then all of that allows us to store documents in what we call views. They're somewhat similar to folder, but we don't want you to think of them as folders. Essentially, the metadata will say, hey, this is for this customer, we're going to store it in the customer view. or this is this folder and we're going to store it in the order view. Whatever it might be, the rules of the views allows, once you save the metadata card, M-Files to store it for you. And then this is just a quick of the business process or workflow. It's how we automate a document or a non-document object to move through a process. This is a quick invoice. I'm sure you guys all recognize this. Invoice, approve, reject. It goes through approval. We wait for payment status, and then we can automate it to even be stored for audit, and then apply a retention and deletion policy. So we no longer have to worry about someone having to remember to delete the documents from our system. And just some quick stuff, right? We have some AI. This is kind of a chat bot. Hey, summarize this for me, or search for any candidate through these resumes that has 2 years of audit history. And then, right, when you save documents in, M-Files is smart and it'll say, oh, I recognize this document. This is an AP invoice and it's for this customer. It's extracting the data from the document because it remembers it. And now you're just essentially clicking and confirming. I know I am a little short on time here, so Jess, I'm honestly just going to hand it back to you. But if what I was saying, right, if what I said about companies struggling to manage data and their processes, if that does resonate with you guys, please feel free to reach out. There is my information right there on the screen.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. And we will go ahead and get on to our tips and tricks with Ray if he is ready.
I am.
All right. There we go.
Okie dokie. All clear?
Yep.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ray. My last name is Freebertshauser. I've been doing this for a few years, having worked with Made to Manage, Consona, Appian. We've got a lot of, as Jim mentioned earlier, a lot of experience piled up in the group. I've got 15 years of Made to Manage and another 12 as a user of Made to Manage. So my intent today is show some things in the 7 series of Made to Manage that some people may not know about. If you do, bear with me. Some of these things are basic and you may already know them, but sometimes I point them out simply because when I do some consulting with some folks, I find out they didn't even know it was there. So the old adage holds true: we don't know what we don't know. And hopefully you might gather one thing out of this and generally see if it'll be of help to you. So we're going to touch on some basic things. This is just a quick overview. These are a few of the items I'll touch on today. I noticed the original agenda had things such as EDI and archiving. I'm going to leave that to our specialists in those areas should you have any questions. My effective approach to this today is basically to give you some brief understanding of some, or a little bit more detailed understanding of some of the things that might help you out. These are just a few we're going to touch on. And given the amount of time, I'm going to jump in here. I highly recommend, if you have questions, shoot them into the chat, if you will. We'll be happy to entertain those questions at the end or at the end of my session. So let's get started here. A couple of things real briefly. I don't have, and I'm not going to PowerPoint you to death. This is actually my only remaining slide other than the one that asks for questions. But what you have basically here is just a quick, brief summary. And if anybody needs this, I can shoot a copy off. But these are in version 7X of Made to Manage, the shortcut keys and functional keys that you can utilize. Because we went to the .NET format, some of the keys, such as the modify, which we no longer have in Made to Manage, had to be removed. And you'll see there's certain functional areas in here with the shift, the alt, and the control that'll bounce you around from screen to screen if you're a keyboard person. Nonetheless, it's available. You can do all of this functionality with your mouse as well. A lot of people just like to hit that Alt-T to get to that transfer screen and knock out a couple quick things. So with that said, I'm going to jump right into Made to Manage and take a look at some things. Are we good here, Jessica? Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Again, I apologize if this is elementary to some people, but other people it may not be. So I'm going to just go right in here and hit a couple of viewpoints here. By the way, notice anything that has a yellow field, or in your case, if you have set your screen up with a different color format. In other words, they have themes available to us that you can apply right up here. If you choose a different one, note that any required field or mandatory field will have its particular color highlighted for you to make sure that you jump in there. One of the very important things, and first and foremost, is again, there's no more modify button. But one of the key areas I think are the browse and the search that were implemented and Made to Manage. Of course, browsing is pretty straightforward. We go in, we open the table, and we review the actual records that are associated with this table, in this case, sales orders. I have 184 out of 184 records. I have a very small database here just for training purposes, but you can adjust this number. If you need help with that, just let us know. It is an adjustment that's done in an eye-on-eye setting to add more to the screen, or to browse more records, if you will. The key up here to many of these things, or functionality in here, is the column header. All screens and browses and searches and Made to Manage now follow the same pattern of events. So if I hover over top of this, I can click on any one of these headers, and you'll notice that it's going to sort by those. I can right click on these. I can ask it to adjust the columns that I want. So there's a field here called Column Chooser. Let's go in and set the Column Chooser and say, okay, in my world, I don't use this SO description, so I'll just drag it off of here. Maybe I use contracts, so I might want to drag that up and put it up there. You have this functionality by user to adjust these screens. This will not impact everybody else that logs in. There's other things you can do in here. Of course, grab sorting and sort by ascending and descending. Remember, you just use Column Chooser, best fits. You want to use a filter. You've got a massive database you want to go through. You have all kinds of functions here to allow you to do different high-level searches. For instance, if you don't want the company, you may want the due date. You may want the city. You may want any other value in here. A highly, highly leveraged type of filter that we can add if we want to go down that path. Okay. Additionally, there's things like we can show the find panel, and that'll throw up a find up here. You can throw value up into here. It will search this whole table for anything in these fields that match that find. So if you're hunting down something very particular, it may be of value to you. In here, we can just simply type in, in my case, I've got a customer here, but I'm looking for somebody that starts with the letter C. I can throw that in and just start chasing it down. Keep an eye on this down here, because this has got a contained value. So we may want to clear this out before we do any more searching in here. And then we can implement that accordingly. So again, if I want to just look for the B valued people, just throw a B in there and it'll start sorting down to that number or value, letter. Also, if you want to throw another filter in here, this little guy here will allow you to go in and create another filter. So it does not equal the following value. Throw that in there as well. Another key area up in here is this little guy up here, this filter. It'll bring down a complete list of every, in this case, company name that's in this table. And I just want to go to unique fans and it'll sort it for you accordingly. Of course, you can move this data around or the columns around where you want. So based on contract that I added, I'll move it over here. Again, it'll stay this way for you, the user. The other option you have in here that sometimes is very helpful is the ability for us who like to use Excel. I'm sure nobody out there uses Excel. Joke, everybody does. We've thrown this listing with all the associated values right here, and then you can treat this accordingly in any way, shape, or form that you want, as you would with any other type of Excel file that you need. Export it, save it, and then manipulate it for whatever reason. Those are a few things we can do in the browse. And again, you know, if we do search, it's grab a field and it'll throw it back in that browse screen for us. Searching for a company that starts with B, and then we'll just do a search. We're going to find out that we get everybody, Brookside, Boeing, Brookside, everybody that starts with the letter B, and then we can manipulate this screen as we did in the past or in the last discussion. Okay, .NET brings a lot of nice things to this application, one of which, if you want, you can go in and just do copy and paste. A lot easier than it was in the past. Highlight it. This was created from that quote. Right click, copy it, take it over, put it in a Word document, whatever you want to do. Simple things like that. Some people really to this day don't know. Okay. Off on my right here, I've got three pull-out tabs, one of which, the top one, is what we call our favorites. If you remember in previous versions, you may have had that up here on the top or on the bottom. Here we can load as many favorites in here as we want. It will not degrade your performance. Put what you need in here. Don't put everything in here. How do we get this stuff in here? Well, the approach to putting it in there is pretty simple. Once you know, you're going to go to the transfer, or if you use the key strokes, it's going to be Alt-T. I want to put in, let's put in AWIP. I'm going to hit OK. That's going to take me to that screen. And I can, well, I kind of jumped the gun there. The logic here is when we're in that transfer screen, we can set it to be a favorite to appear over here. So again, Alt-T, jump into that screen, grab this AWIP. I apologize, I jumped too fast. Right click on it. Right click, I left clicked, and hit add to favorites. And once we've done that, you'll notice that on your favorite screen, we have just added WIP adjustments. You want to remove it, right click on it, remove it from the favorites. You want to do one other thing. You may want this because you're in AR invoicing. You may want to jump on this thing and pre-populate your screen when you first log in the morning. Go ahead and right click again. And when you do, it's going to say preload the screen at startup. It means when you log in to Main to Manage in the morning, the first screen you're going to see is your credit or your customer AR invoice screen. Hope that's of help. Some great options there to get you to maneuver and navigate quickly. I'm going to jump up here to the top to go executive information. I'm surprised still to this day, because it's been around since the 3 versions of Made to Manage, how many people do not use these overview screens. I highly recommend, if you haven't looked at them, at least look at them. You might find something of value in here that you want to check, evaluate on a regular basis, day in and day out. And I'm not sure why my system has considerably slowed down here, but we'll give it a minute to catch up. Customer quotes, due, prospects, shipped items returned, sales orders beyond due date, sales orders started but not open. Why would you have those? Examine these, put up a list, throw them out to explore. I'll show you what that is in just a moment. But these are what Made to Manage has for years called management by exception. We want to look at the stuff that's creating problems for us. not everything, and have to weed out the problems ourselves. That's what these are for. Sales orders started but not opened. Well, there's something hiding out there. I want to know what it is and figure out why. So that applies once we're in executive information to production. It applies to finance as well. Each one has their own set of unique tabs. So, and I'm going to give this a second and let this thing heat up because I'm not sure why we're running slow on here, but I'll try to talk my way through it. You'll notice on the production, we have 2 different tabs in here with multiple amounts of entries in here we can check. Jobs with all quantities complete but not closed. Internal jobs with quantities complete, not moved. How many people get bid on that one? These are here to help you get the answers quickly and move through your day without having to dig and find that problem. They're there in front of you. The last thing here is the business analytics reports, who many people don't even bother to look at or haven't looked at. It's kind of maybe intimidating or something to that effect. I've run one, for example, and you're going to find that the output is thrown out into Excel. And what I did was I ran the sales trending report, and you'll notice that this is all dropped out into pivot format. Pivot meaning we can sort, we can filter. So these are all pre-written for you, let alone there's charts in here for you. There's more, there's summaries, there's detailed data, the actual data that's been dragged out of here. Take a look at these. These may be of good value to somebody. And there are ones for production. There's one for production. There's one for finance. And there are analytical tools that allow you to go in and filter and sort. And instead of having to dig all that data out yourself, we're going to let you rip it out through one that we've already provided for you. Okay. Let me go back to the sales order here. A couple things here. If I add a sales order, I can add a new sales order. I can throw this information in here, who I'm going to sell it to, et cetera, their purchase order number, pick a sold to, grab that person, throw that in there, hit OK. It'll pre-populate. What else do we need? I think we're good here once we get the customer in here. And then I don't have to, at any point in time, save all of this. I can just keep moving over and start adding items. Add an item, add another item, add another item, unlike the old school where we had to save it all the time. So that's a nice little variable that we can play with as we move through here. The listing over here of check boxes, I don't know if many people know this, but you can set the default on these now in the sales system setup. So if you want this to be checked every time or unchecked every time, go ahead and adjust that accordingly. So we can go in and do multiple edits in here and throw a number of different things in all at once. I want you to know a couple things as well. If you don't know, you're going to have pop-up links. That's what these guys here are, in the little chain link right in the middle of your screen here. Click on that guy. It'll open the product class screen up or the filter screen. And if you have permissions, you can add or edit it accordingly. Don't mess with the product classes, by the way. But nonetheless, if you needed to add a ship via or something to that effect, you can do that. The other thing that we have actively running up here, of course, the report screen allows us to look at reports associated with the screen that's open. The related does the same thing. Nice little thing is it adds how many number of that instance you will see available to you. Attachments and web links. I have the ability to add an attachment. Now, this attachment can be an actual copy of the document as stored within the database or a link to where that document exists. Okay, so open this up. Very simple. That's a particular drawing or image or whatever that we have associated specifically with this particular sales order in this case. And these functional operations pretty much across the board. Let's see here, activity. These are basically what I would call to-dos. So I can set up to-dos to say, hey, Ray, I want you to call Helen on 423, and I want you to talk to her about the drawings we're supposed to have in hand. And we can have a historical review of this. This is part of the to-do functionality that's found under CRM, and you can just add it right here. And you can have these run in terms of what are due, but you can also run them as a part of a notification or the Made to Manage notifier. And we'll talk about that in a moment here. We talked about the keyboard shortcuts that we have. A number of those are available to us. And again, I can submit that and let you folks review as needed. Over to the right, let's move over to the pullouts again. Explorer screen. What is this guy? Well, this guy is a great screen to do what is or historically been called drilling into the data, if you will. So one thing, for those of you that use non-standard parts, keep that in mind right there. It's a phenomenal tool to look up orders, data, information, invoice, whatever you have associated with non-standard items, and hunt them down relatively quickly. I'm going to go back to the sales order option here, and we're going to throw a screen up here and let us see how the Explorer basically works. What we have here is a typical Explorer screen. In this case, it is sales orders. Now, note we can sort this by facility. We can even put a part number in. We can even put a customer's PO in here and have it bring back all the information. I may want to filter this because I'm looking for something from a particular company that starts with the letter C. I think it was Carlson. And as we narrow it down, we'll find it's Carlson. There's an open order here. I want to see that open order. Well, notice that this is in a different color underlined. It means it's hyperlinked. So if I double click on it, it's going to take me right to that sales order. And again, if you are in purchase orders, receiving, and job orders, it would take you to any one of those. Any one of those screens will function the same way. This will open up the particular sales order by double clicking on it, and boom, there it is. Again, I apologize. My system's running a bit slow because I've got lots of different servers running on this right now. Here's the beauty of this thing that I really appreciate and have for a long time, ever since it came out. I want you to right click on this. And when you do, you're going to see it's going to throw that sales order over here onto the left-hand side of the panel. And it will tell you everything that the system knows about that sales order. And it will allow us to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. Is there a job order tied to this sales order? Yep, there's 3 of them. Who's a salesperson? Okay, it's Larry. I know that much. Maybe I want to look at this account. Maybe I want to learn more about this particular account. Right click on it. And we're going to blow that up and have that populate and tell us everything that's under there. Right click on the sales order status. Tell us what you know about the sales order from top to bottom. Okay. In this case, there's this job order that's open that I may want to find more detail on. Go ahead and right click on it. It'll open that sales order up, or job order in this case, and give us more detail and break it down, 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 as far as you really want to go. Okay. And you're going to see right now it threw that job order over there, and I can break this down and have it look at more refined detail associated with that job. Give me 1 second while it catches up here. How do we get these over here on this list? Well, the key to that is going back to home. By the way, we've expanded the job orders now, and you'll see that I clicked too many times, but it will give us everything that it knows about this job order. How do we add things to the Explorer screen? Well, we come up here and we go to Explorer, And we're going to say, okay, well, instead of looking at it this way, I'm going to select a particular screen I want to explore, and I will populate that screen up here, or the mnemonic for that screen. Okay, in this case, shipping. And over here on the right, you're going to see a little box that says favored. Once you click that, that will deposit that mnemonic or that screen link over here on this particular tab. Okay? Again, drilling is the key to this. How much do you want to know about this job order, the product class, the job order status, you know, any of this stuff? It is very, very powerful and very good approach to finding and drilling down to something you need to find. Okay? Notice these grids are exportable as well, much like we did earlier. So that's Explorer. Give you some good ideas as what you can do with that. And if you have any questions, let us know. Highly popular tool in my book and with many other people. By the way, when I talk about searching and things, I often find that some of the simple tools of the past have been lost along the way. One of which, and I'll share this with you as soon as this comes up, is the basic typical old history button within Made to Manage that you'll find up here in the top center part of your screen. I'm looking at sales orders, but I may want to look at the history. Well, when I do that, that simple little screen will pop up the history for this item. And I can look up a number of different records associated with this relative to the customer, part number, whatever. There happens to be no sales order history on this, but maybe there's some purchase order history. Let's see what it says here. I'm not sure. I just picked this up at random. So this is, if I'm not mistaken, is a make item or a make to stock item. We'll see if it pulls anything up. But the point being, you've got this, you've had this. Many people don't use it. It can be a quick approach to finding something very quick and simple relative to a part number you're looking at. So keep that in mind. Very simple screen to go to. Just click on the history, and then you can alter it and add whatever you want accordingly. I mentioned to-dos earlier. A lot of people don't mess with this because they can, you know, it's not Salesforce.com, or it's not, you know, it's not some unique CRM functionality. Look, it is what it is, and it's a simple way to go in and say, I need to remind myself to do something about this sales order, this purchase order, this receiver, this invoice, whatever. I want to let myself know there's a to-do out there that I need to take care of. So it's a nice thing, and it'll track history for me too. So I'll know every time I touch this thing, if I use this and edit it accordingly, I'll have a running history of some of the tasks I may have performed to keep track of this thing. I know for some of you that's maybe sounds like too much work, but nonetheless, it's there, and it eliminates a lot of questions down the road if you choose to do so. So to-dos, yes, I actually have to, when I start Made to Manage first time, I have to-dos load up on my screen as the first thing that appears. In other words, I will see all of my active to-dos that I need to address and whether they are due today or not. It's helpful. It can be a nice way to approach things so I don't forget to do them. Notifiers. I don't know if anybody uses these. If you look down in your bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see 3 lights over here, red, yellow, and green. What are these? These are events and actions notifications. What do they mean? They basically mean in the event that something happens, I want to be alerted about it. Now, some people use this, other people don't, but let's think about it in a working example. I have a job that's on hold because engineering is messing with the bill of material, let's say. Well, why don't I set one up and I have it fire off of a specific set of circumstances that says, look, and this is an example here. Here's a sales order. It'll write this for you basically, and you can even drag and drop information or values into this instead of learning how to write SQL. Basically, I'm saying the sales order and the sales order release tables, here's what I want you to do. When that sales order has been modified, okay, for a specific line item or whatever you put in here, I want this message to appear. Where do I want it to appear? On my screen or light up a high priority? What does that mean? Down here, if I fire up and click on this red, it'll throw up my alert central and tell me there's some red stuff that needs to be taken care of. And as you can see, I've been a bad boy here, but nonetheless, they're here. It'll also keep them once you've reviewed them, and you can go in and delete them eventually if you want to. Why do you want this? Well, if you've got a critical thing, I've got a $150,000 job waiting on $5 worth of parts coming from Granger. Well, I want to know when that thing hits the back door and my receiving guy opens up that receiver. As soon as that happens, I can get an alert. I can jump on it. I can tell all the people, your part's here. Go ahead and get it done so we can ship it today. Just a working example. A lot of people don't use this. There were some issues with it in the past. I think it functions rather well. It's up to you. You can send email alerts out, a number of different options. Even with the latest, I believe there's SMS functionality we can allow you to use as well. Okay, last tab over here on the pullouts on the right, locator. Everybody probably remembers the old locator guy that was up here on the top. The little looked like a guy with glasses sitting on a park bench, if I remember right. Locator is another search tool. Now, we originally taken this away, brought it back in a version 7.5. One, if I'm not mistaken, and not only did they bring it back, but they enhanced it quite a bit. What do you want to look for? A sales order. You want to look at the sales order number. You can bring it up and grab a sales order number. You want it from dates, order dates, due dates, modified dates, from, to. The filtering functions are highly, highly detailed here. At the bottom of each of these screens, you'll have, or each of these boxes, I'm sorry, you'll have a couple of options. Delete it. Here's one that says open the sales order screen. This goes directly to the sales order screen. What's the bell? The bell is click to open the sales order status. I don't need to look at the sales order. I want to know what the status of the sales order is. And for those of you that don't use SOStat or JOStat, look at them, learn them, use them. Okay. You can also take, and let's just grab one so we can see what the heck we're doing. Let's grab that one. And so if I want the sales order status, click on the bell, it'll go out, launch the sales order, launch the SOStat screen, and we'll have that here momentarily if my system decides to warm up. The last option you have over here on some of these is to go down and export this data off into, here's your sales order status on to the left, by the way. Now I would rather like to see this under the Explorer option that we had up here. So let's go hit that button, and we're going to throw that out into an Explorer screen that's going to allow us once again to do that drilling function that we saw before. Okay. That drilling will allow us to dive into that sales order and dive into it deeper in terms of job orders, addresses, invoices, shipping. Is there any shipping tied to this yet? I'm not sure. It's still an open sales order, but I can find out. Click on the shipping. There is a shipper. What did we ship? Well, maybe I can just double click this and open the shipper, but I can drill down again and I can get the detail more specifically as to what is going on or what may not be going on that we need to find out. So lots of options relative to using the locator. And again, This is the screen. It's just to show you it brought the screen up. It didn't drill it down and go back. And I'm going to close some stuff up here just to get some real estate back. But nonetheless, you can see that it actually went out and went from locator and linked to that Explorer. You don't have to do that. You can simply go out and open the sales order stat, and depending on the screen that you're on, it will vary on the options that you have. But each one of them basically allows you to throw it back into Explorer should you want to do that. I had mentioned earlier that there are options with the data in terms of exporting. So in the event that you want to take this screen, this particular filtered grid here that may have multiple entries, and throw it out to Excel, you can do that, as I mentioned earlier. Should you want to go out and run a report and throw that report out to Excel, you know that the new report parameter interface up in the top left will give you those options to export to Excel. Or you could throw it out into CSV in different formats should you want to. I think that's a very, very solid approach to getting your data out of here without having to be a SQL guru or somebody that would mess with the database and possibly create some damage. Stick with the onboard tool that you have. It'll get most of what you're looking for the average user, and basically take a look at those options as well. Okay, I am going to jump back out of here and grab this piece here. We talked about tips and tricks. We got the keyboard shortcuts. And again, I have very, very few slides here. So what I'm going to tell you at this point in time, for the sake of time and effort that we put into this, I want to open it up for any questions, should there be any. And if there's not much, we'll move on to our next presenter.
I do have a question for you. They said their search always gives us the oldest stuff first. How can we find the newest first instead?
It gives you the oldest first in the search box, is what they're saying.
Yes, from when you first started your presentation into the Made to Manage.
That's a browser or search screen. I'm not sure why it's sorting in that manner, other than they may want to click on the order date to resort it. I'll have to check and double check that, but it should bring them up in a sequential order what was last searched on that screen. So if somebody searched it, clicked it on the, let's say the order date, and clicked on that, and it filtered it back to the oldest date first, it's going to keep that for the next time you open it. You just need to click on that header to resort it, basically. Hope that answers the question.
Okay. They said it doesn't, they change it every time to search for the newest.
Okay. Interesting. Let me take a look at that and try to respond back to that when I have a moment.
And then, Jess, if you could take that person's name down, email, and then we'll see if we get back to you. Also, for some of you who are on here, you have a chat box. I don't know if Jess has told you, you have a chat box, so you can go ahead and put your questions in there for the chat box, or email Jess right now too. For some of you who do not know, about the chat box and so on.
Yes, you can throw it down in your question box, and it will send it to me so I can ask our presenters. Or if you would like to use the chat box, that works as well. But
thanks, Jess.
Yes.
Any other questions?
No, there is not. So I will take this down, and so we can look further into it to see if it's something on their end or something with the system.
Yeah, just shoot me the information and I'll run a quick rundown on it. It should, as you see here, mine is sorting right now on what criteria. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. but if I want, I can change it to this, or I can change it to this. It should hold those. If it's not, I'm not sure why, but we'll play around with it for them.
All right. Well, thank you, Ray, for all of your helpful knowledge.
Oh,
And
good. Thanks, everybody, for participating.
we will go ahead and go on to our next segment. Ken, if you are ready, I will switch it over to you.
I am ready.
All right.
Here, screen. Okay, you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, today we're going to talk about integrated made-to-manage infrastructure management. We're going to touch on a couple utilities in here. We're going to touch on backups, and I'm going to touch on two features. One's archiving, which will discuss the performance of your system and removing old data, and then we'll touch briefly on the EFT process at the end of this. The biggest one that I really want to concentrate on is your backup strategy. Backup, I compare that to insurance. You buy insurance, you keep insurance, you get reminded every 6 months or every year or however often your payment is due that you have to do something with your insurance. Backup strategies are a little different. Typically, you set them up and then they just go. And they go, and they go until they don't. And if you're not paying attention to it or you don't go out and look at it, you don't know that they stopped working. You thought you had coverage, but now you have an incident and you have no coverage. The big thing that's been coming up lately has been ransomware. Last year it was weather events. Right now it's currently ransomware. Sometimes it's an electrical event or a hardware issue. And of course, you occasionally get the user that goes in and does delete all. And was like, whoops, I didn't know what that button did. So you want to make sure that you have backups and that you're backing up the right stuff and you're backing it up as often as you should, and you're going back to make sure that you can actually access your backups. So you need to have a plan. You know, who's responsible for the backups? Where are you putting the backups? How are you doing your backups? How often? You know, what the frequency is. If there are a lot of things are virtual machines now that people are using. Are you taking snapshots? How do you plan on restoring items like that? Another piece you want is the location of your installation files and license information. This becomes really important when you're dealing with ransomware and you have to rebuild your servers. Or if you lose a server and you have to rebuild your server. A lot of times people will only back up the data, or they'll back up the pertinent data directories. If you got a virtual machine and you're taking snapshots of it, that typically will, that'll help you get back the whole operating system. Then you have to go back and get your SQL server updated with the latest backups. You want to make sure that you're keeping copies of those installation files and license information locally as well as externally, be it on the cloud or in somebody's house on a hard drive somewhere. You get an external drive. The reason for that is a lot of people used to take their backups and put them on another machine or on another drive. Well, if you lose the whole machine, that drive becomes useless. If you get hit with ransomware and it goes out and encrypts every machine on your network, that backup machine is no longer valid. You can't get to it. So you want to make sure you have something externally that you can get the information back from as well, should that arrive. And then, of course, you have the approach based upon level of impact. A lot of people think that setting up your SQL database backups is enough, but if you lose the whole server, it's not enough. Typically, you do the database backups locally so that if somebody goes in and runs a cost roll-up that they didn't plan on rolling or performing, or they did some other action within the database that had adverse effects, you can always get back to where you were before that activity occurred. And then, of course, you want to make sure you document the logins and passwords for your server pieces. That's your SQL passwords, your user passwords, your service account passwords, your admin account passwords, any passwords that you need for the system to operate. You want to make sure you have those documented so that when you do your restore, it's typically less disruptive if you're using the same accounts and you have those passwords available. So you want to identify your internal personnel, and it may be different for different applications. Who's responsible for what? Made to manage may be one person, AutoCAD may be another person, Salesforce may be another person. So you want to make sure who you need to contact if something does go wrong. And of course, your vendor information and contacts as well. And that'll be different for each product that you own. Once again, I said, you want to make sure you have copies stored off-site, especially in the case of ransomware where you can't get to anything on your network after it's been encrypted. And of course, license codes are essential. Backup files. This part I'm applying to SQL. On the SQL tables, you have what is known as simple recovery. And what that does is it will do a full backup at night, and then that's it. So now if somebody comes along at 3:30 in the afternoon and does something that corrupts the database, something happens that corrupts the database, anything causes your company to go out of whack on a SQL database, you can do a simple recovery and restore that. But the problem is it takes you back to the time that ran, which could be 2 in the morning last night. Well, at 3:30 in the afternoon, that's really not ideal because you've lost a whole day's work essentially inside the system. If you have them set up for full recovery, it'll back up your transaction logs at the frequency you set, and we usually recommend every hour. So that then when you come back to restore, you can do a point-in-time recovery. So if somebody does something at 3:03 in the afternoon and you have a transaction log back up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can get back to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You've lost 3 minutes worth of work versus, 15 and a half hours. Where you store your backups, like I said, you want to make sure you have a copy internally, especially for the SQL backups. You'll have those typically stored on the SQL server or on another machine off of it to where you could do those quick restores should you just have a hiccup in operations. If you have a major catastrophe that occurs and you lose the server, then those backups that you have on the server are going to be gone. So you always want to make sure you have some other place that you can get it. Now, virtual machines, I've seen where people put their data drives onto, it's not tied to the virtual machine, but it's mapped. You can do that as well as long as you have access to that drive. And always ensure that you have a copy off-site, whether it's on tape and you're taking the tape home, an external drive, or to the cloud. That's important, because if you don't have a copy off somewhere and for some reason you lose the machines or you lose the building, any horrible event that could occur, you want to make sure you have your data somewhere and that you're disciplined about maintaining that. And then you want to go through and you want to check to make sure you can actually recover those. You can set up a backup system, and I've seen where people have set it up and it runs fine for 3 years, and then you go to do a restore and you realize that A, it hasn't been running, B, it doesn't work, and C, that you just can't bring it back. So you want to go back and test it every now and then, just to make sure that you can restore the information, you can access it, and it is still running. Always check to make sure your backups are running. So that's the big one. I've probably, God, what it's been? We probably had 3 ransomware attacks hit customers in the last 3 months, and we've gotten them rebuilt. Some didn't have passwords. We were able to, break in and get the passwords behind the scenes, stuff like that. But some don't have license codes. You can't get the license codes back. There's been other information that's tied to made to manage, like attachments, items like that weren't being backed up. Well, when those got encrypted, you couldn't get them. So you got to make sure that your backup strategy includes everything that you want to be able to recover in the future. Another good example is for people that are on version 601, you want to make sure that you're 601 and before, actually, you want to, well, actually it goes to 703. I apologize. 703 and before, you want to make sure you're backing up your M2M data directory religiously, because that contains your M2M or your util directory, and it still uses the utuser.fpt file, which is a memo file in Foxborough. And if that ever exceeds 2 gig, you can't log into Made to Manage. Now you can fix it by restoring an old copy of it, but if you don't have a backup of it, then you got to go from scratch with your users. So make sure you're getting copies of the appropriate files. And if you don't know what those files are that you need to back up, reach out to us and we can help you determine, for Made to Manage at least, what files you want to be backing up, so that if you do have something happen, you can get back to where you were before it occurred. Okay, so that's my biggest point today, is make sure your backups are working and make sure you can get to them. Okay, data archiving, I'm going to touch on that briefly. I don't know if anybody is familiar with data archiving, but data archiving comes into play as far as cleaning up your database. So I've been working with the Made to Manage product for, boy, what's it been, 27 years now. And if I had my original database of my original company that I was working on, that database is going to be fairly large. As you get that database, as it grows over time, it's going to affect your search functionality, the data retrieval, just the overall performance of Made to Manage. The more data you have in there, the more stuff it has to go through to find information, to process information, to do different processes. Some of the queries in Made to Manage are written really well. They'll exclude certain things based on the status of the order, the date of the order, what that, where that order sits. But other queries are not quite so well, or written quite so well. So you want to make sure that you're keeping on top of the size of your data. The other thing that affects is your backup size. As your database grows and it's got all this extra information you're probably not using anymore, those database backups get bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on. So by maintaining, keeping up with that, you can reduce the amount of time that's being used for your database backups. Archiving, they had that in version 601, and of course it's in 751. The 751 version of archiving is more robust than it was in 601. 601, basically you ended up with snapshots, and then it would go in and delete the records from the production company. So you'd have your production company, which had, it was a smaller set, but in order to get to the other data, the archive data, you would have to go to another company and look at it. Well, that was all fine for that particular process. But then if you wanted to do another archive 2 years later, you had to create another copy of that data, of the current data you had, and then you had another archive company. So now you had two companies and you had to determine, okay, do I go to this company to find it, or do I go to this company to find it? In Made to Manage 751, you have one data archive company. And there's two tables, or there's two databases that get made. One's an archive database, which will hold everything that you archive, and the other one is a conjoined database, which is essentially views. You don't see the M2M archive when you go into Made to Manage itself, but the conjoined company, you can open it up and it'll show you everything that's in the archive company from the beginning of time that you started using Made to Manage up until now. If somebody puts a record in now, you'll see it. It'll show up in the view. The only catch with this is you can't edit anything in this conjoined company. You can go back into the production company and edit stuff, but the old archived records that you've archived, you can't edit anything, which is a good thing because technically you've archived it. You're done with it. You don't need to change anything. Any changes you made would affect your financials going forward anyway. So it's just a snapshot that gets merged and you can see it. Now, what will happen when you do the data archive is you can also go in this conjoined company and you can run reports. You can run reports of you can do the sales order document for something. Say you archived, for example, 5 years back. If you went back and you wanted to see a sales order from 10 years ago, you can go into the conjoined company and you can run that sales order and print it out as if it was in your production company. It doesn't exist in your production company anymore, but you can get it. You can do the same thing with your financial statements. You can do it with any report inside Made to Manage. You can go in and run that data. It's not lost. It's there for reference, but you still have access to it and you can still run reports off of it. You can't add and carry from a sales order that's 10 years old and has been archived, but you can get the information and re-enter it, for a new order. It allows you to move many years of records to another location. It'll move it into that archive database. The really nice thing about 751 is you do the first data archive, and that one takes the longest because you're determining where you want to go. Say you've been on it since 2006. You may say, I want to archive, and typically people go back 5 years. I want to archive from the beginning of 2020 over to the archive company, remove that stuff out of the system, and then you have 5 years worth of data. That can take 16 hours to do. Now, next year you decide, okay, I want to get rid of 2021 and move that into my archive. That'll take you roughly an hour or two because you're only moving 1 year's worth of data. And Made to Manage will check to make sure that the records you're moving are fully qualified to be moved. So if you have a customer that you have marked as inactive, but you have sales orders in the current period, you may have invoices in the current period, it won't move that customer over to the archive database until all the conditions have been met. So that's where the cutoff date comes into play. You'll get exceptions lists and they can be handled, but it protects you from destroying all your links, making sure you don't have orphaned records after the data archive is done. It's written in a way that it protects you from doing damage to your database. You can still archive the majority of your records and deal with the exceptions later, or we typically do the exceptions. If we do the archive for you, we'll work on the exceptions for you and get those moved over. See here, it's not possible 2 years from now, ability to run a test archive. I kind of got off my slides. I apologize for that. So that basically covers archiving. Archiving is a tool that I'm really fond of. It really helps your data management. It helps the speed of your system. And of course, it helps the size of the footprint of the databases on your server. And it helps move that old data off into the archive location. You still have access to it. You don't have to, you don't have to choose which company it's in. It stores it nice and clean inside that data archive file. And if you're interested in having data archiving done, you can reach out to Jimmy, James Cooey, and he can get you set up with a quote or information on it. And it's one of those things too that if you need assistance with it, if you want to do it yourself and you need assistance with it, we're more than happy to assist you with that as well. Okay, server maintenance. This a lot of questions come up on when to re-index. You got performance issues. There speed issues that are occurring. You're getting some odd errors. There's one tool that's really outstanding that they put in 751, which I utilize quite a bit as far as troubleshooting a lot of data issues and correcting indexes, and that's the M2M DB utility. In your M2M data directory, which stores all your Made to Manage information regarding the data and the connections, there's a loading folder, and inside there's an M2M DB utility subdirectory. Inside that subdirectory is the M2M DB utility tool. And when you launch that, it brings up the screen that you see here on the left. And the two that I utilize are the M2M DB connections and the M2M DB maintenance. The other three, the three and not counting the exit button, would be restore missing and modified standard DBO stored procedures and functions. That I've never had an instance where I've had to run that. Typically, if you got a SQL admin who goes in and removes something or deletes something, or if somebody goes in to a report Made to Manage, technically you can't do it. For removing a function, you can't delete a standard function. Typically, and every once in a while you'll find somebody who can kind of trick the system, or they find a way around it. That's the only time you need to run that. So I'm not going to touch on that. Typically, you'll never have to touch that. Same thing with the rectification utility. I've never had to use that one. The report reset tool, is if for some reason you've come in and done a bunch of custom reports, or you want to just remove them and go back to just default, you run the report reset tool and it'll go back and change all your RP make back to the settings that came out of the box. Typically, the only time you do that is if you're running a test upgrade, or you want to test stuff to determine what reports you need for an upgrade. We'll run that when you create your test system, so that you can at least run the standard reports and determine if you actually need the custom. But if you do that in your live system, you reset all the reports back to standard. So I don't recommend doing that. So I'm going to concentrate on the first two. M2M DB connections, what that does is it allows for system reconfiguration. You'll have that if you're restoring a test company from the live company. You can do that from restoring from a backup. Or if you're moving over to a test machine and you bring your databases over to that test machine, you want to go into the M2M DB connections and reset that and then rebuild your views. The M2M DB maintenance is the one that rebuilds the indexes and updates statistics. So I'm going to start with the M2M DB utility, which is your M2M DB connections. When you select that, it will default the system path from your M2M Win INI on the server. And once you get that, you hit next, and then it'll bring up the, well, let me back up. When you select that, if you click on reconfigure system connection, and the only time you'll select that is if for some reason you cannot connect to your util database, or if you're moving it over to another server. If you have that box checked, then in the lower right, you'll be shown this screen. And what this screen does is it shows you from the UT comp file, or in this case from the, there's a XML file that's written out there that does your system connection. It'll show you the current server that it's pointing to, the name of the database, which will be M2M system for reconfiguring the system, and then your login and your password. If you're moving this to a test machine, what you'll want to do is go down, change your SQL login and your password, and then go up to your server and then hit the drop down. If you have the SQL browser service on, that server name that you're going to will show up in that drop down. If you don't see your SQL server name, you can type it in there, or you can go out into services and start the SQL browser service and then come in and try again. But until you get that in there and you have the login name and password, your databases will not show up. So you have to have that login name and password and the correct server. You hit the database you want, do a drop down. You'll see every database in that server, and then you'll hit finish, and it'll come up and it'll tell you the system database information has been reconfigured. You restart M2M DB utility, which means you go all the way out, come back in, and then you can start working on your different companies. Now, when you come in again, you'll go back here and you'll just hit next without hitting the reconfigure system connection, and it'll bring you up to your companies. They do not show you the company number. They do it by name. So if all your companies have the same name, you're going to be a little challenged trying to find the company. If you're taking it over to a new server, you would select the reconfigure company connection and reconfigure company data path. And then once again, you'd be prompted with this screen that would then ask you for what server you're going to, what's your database, and your login credentials. Same rules apply. If the SQL browser is not running, you won't see the database here. And once you select the database or your server, you won't see any databases until you get your information entered here for the login name and password. And then, of course, your company path, where that's located. Typically, this will be UNC pathing for 751. So you can just type it in there, and then you hit next, and it will go through. It'll go through when it's done to reconfigure that. It'll take you to this screen. I typically only run the top three unless for some reason you have an archive and consolidated database, which is related exclusively to data archiving. And you can click on that and it'll reset the links. If you don't have an archive, and of course, if you don't have an archive, you're not going to have a consolidated database. So if you don't have an archive, you won't check that. And then when it's done, you hit finish, and when it's done, it tells you it's complete, and it'll ask if you want to view the log file for details. If you hit no, you can still find the log files. They're kept in the same directory as the M2M DB utility tool. So if you go out there, you'll see your log files, and it'll show you exactly what it did. If you ran into an error, you'll see an error in there. I typically don't see many errors with it. It just goes out and refreshes the views. If you're changing the connection for some reason, it may come back and tell you, this user is not authorized, items like that. But the log file will give you information on what went wrong. You usually run that. I would run that, once a month as needed, to refresh the views without checking the reconfigure. You won't have to reconfigure the database connections unless you're having problems connecting to the databases. If you're not having problems, just come in and do the views. And that just refreshes those views. So then the next one we come down to is, this is the second one, the M2M DB maintenance. This one's the one you need to be careful with. To select the company you want to perform the operation on. So you'll come in here, it'll give you the system path, and then it'll show you your different databases. You have your company databases, and if you select that, it'll come down to the drop-in, and you can pick the company you want to work on, and it gives you the company number. That's a little nicer. That's what you're used to with Made to Manage. It usually gives you the number, so you can pick the companies you want to work with. And then you come in here and rebuild the table indexes. It defaults to 80 for your fill factor, which is fine. I just typically use the default. But then you also have an option to update table statistics. This usually happens if somebody accidentally shrank the database. If your statistics get out of whack, it's very rare. It could be a virus, a power outage. Like I say, shrinking the database, which is not recommended. We typically shrink the database only in extreme cases, because what that'll do is it'll cause issues with performance. The pages get, there's certain pages that get formed inside your SQL Server. I don't recommend shrinking your database. The older versions of Made to Manage, they have auto shrink turned on. In 751, I don't recommend having that on. The other problem you run into is if you update your statistics, it can cause queries to recompile. And when those recompile, it'll cause a reduction in speed too, as it gets used to what's going on with those queries. So typically, you're not going to update your table statistics unless you're getting severe errors that indicate that you need to rebuild them. And then, of course, you can schedule it as a SQL job as well. So typically, I would not have the update table statistics set, and then you can hit run now. And then it'll go through the process and do your re-indexing. The thing you need to be aware of when you're using M2M DB utility is you need to have exclusive use to the system, because it's going out and it's rebuilding the views in the database, or if you're indexing, it'll re-index it. Some people schedule it as a job in SQL, which is fine, provided that when you have it scheduled, you have exclusive use of the system. And sometimes that's tricky to figure out, because we all have, that person who goes home and doesn't log out of Made to Manage. Then your database is open. So I typically recommend running this manually when you have exclusive use of the system. The big one I would worry about is a refresh of the views. The indexing you can do once a month if you want. I've got customers who never re-index. They just, it hasn't posed them a problem. If you are having performance issues, I would recommend trying the re-index to see if that helps it. And then my final subject is electronic funds transfer. A lot of people are starting to move over to this, especially when you go to do payments, it allows you to do just-in-time payments. There's two different types of methods for transferring funds electronically. You got wire transfer, which is usually they have an extra charge for that. It's not covered underneath the EFT because of the timing of it and the charges involved. And then they have advanced clearinghouse, which they don't use clearinghouses anymore, I don't believe. but it's called the ACH standard. A lot of people mistakenly call an ACH payment a wire transfer, but it's not. It's usually, they're typically, I'm not sure, some banks don't even charge a fee for it, but they're handled by different departments in the bank, and there's different delivery times. Like an ACH, you schedule out, it's usually the next day or the day after. Wire transfers are usually instantaneous. So wire transfers should not be confused with EFT. With the post office working the way it is right now, you can mail something to somebody and it could get there tomorrow, it could get there in 3 months. So people are moving over to EFT so that their bills are getting paid on time. Recently, the check is in the mail has taken on more meaning than ever before in history. It's amazing how long it takes to get something in the mail. With EFT, you save cost on printing checks. You also don't have to pay the postage, and you save the time it takes to get to your vendor, because your vendor will give you their bank account number, and you will transfer it from your bank account number to their bank account number. The process is a lot more efficient, and it has less administrative procedures that that results in a quicker time to get the information out. Your labor and staff, for carting the checks around the office, getting them signed, putting them in envelopes. You don't have to tinker around with any of that. For example, if you're paying your credit cards online, or you're going to a bank portal to pay your credit cards, you're currently using EFT for yourself. That's all this is basically, paying your accounts online. Only with Made to Manage, you can go in. Excuse me. You can go in and process your payments in EFT just like you're processing checks, and it'll create an output file that you can upload to your bank, and then it processes it. The nice thing about it too is if you were to do it through an online portal, you'd have to come in and mark all those payments inside Made to Manage. When you run it through Made to Manage through the EFT process, it goes through and it processes all the payments, so you get all your cash payments recorded, and it processes the invoice in the correct paid status. So it takes care of all those processes just like you were printing a check. And personally, I think the last time I wrote a check was 3 years ago, because I do everything electronically in my personal life. So, I got a lot of companies that are switching over to EFT. It's nice. It lets you control when the money is leaving your account. That's the other thing is you write a check, you don't know when that's going to clear. EFT, it leaves the account right when right the day after you send it. The What's New in Made to Manage 751 manual will give you an overview of what's required to operate it. In 601, it was available through a customization, but it's basically, the same operation for both types. When you go into the setup screens, I'll just run through these quickly, but you'll see that they put in EFT details for the CSAP form, and this functionality is contained within 751. There's no extra license for it. It's contained in there. All you got to do is go in and turn it in or turn it on. So here, if you look at EFT enabled, you click on that, and it pops this box down here where you put your bank information in. And same thing for your vendors. You have to get the bank information from your vendors. You enable it for EFT, get their information put in, and that way you know that they're an EFT payment customer. That's the vendor EFT down here, which that's a horrible picture. Yeah, that's a horrible thing. We'll ignore that. Then you have your template designer, which comes in, and this is where you set up your ACH template, your file template, to tell it what information you're sending over. There are standard templates that banks use. Some banks have their own little flavor of it to where they'll require certain information. They typically have a specification document they can send you. This is something you can set up, or you can reach out to us to set up. We've got experience. We've probably done 40 EFT installations. You basically get the template set up, you send it to the bank for testing. They test it. They come back with any changes that might be needed. We make the change. We send it back. They come back. They approve it, and then you go live with it. It's really a pretty painless process. When you get in here on the invoice, if they're an EFT vendor, their invoice will default to payment mode as EFT. If for some reason you need to print a check, you can come in on the invoice and change it to check, and that way you can print the check. If it's something that you're picking up and you need to give them a check in hand, you can take it off EFT, switch it to check, and then when you go to your AP cash screen, it'll show up under checks. Typically, if it's marked, if the vendor's an EFT, those invoices will come in as EFT. When you come into your AP cash screen to do your payments, you show invoices of payment mode EFT, and it'll only show you the EFT. The other option, of course, is check for those AR clerks that are used, or AP clerks that are used to that. And of course, you have both. I usually recommend doing checks and EFTs in separate batches, just to keep confusion down. You know what you're paying. You keep your totals separate. It just makes it cleaner. And then the AP EFT format or form, this is where you create your EFT batch. So just like a check run, after you do AP cash to do your checks, you'll go in to print your checks. It gives you a screen that shows you all the checks you have to print. So here you come in and it shows you everything you've approved for EFT. At this point, you can come in and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't mean to do this invoice number. You can uncheck it and exclude it from this batch. So if you create the EFT batch based on what you want to pay. Then there's an optional AP EFT authorization form. This is a check and balance inside the system. Typically, when you do checks, you would take those to somebody to sign them. They go through and they decide, they may pick a check out that they don't want to pay this time and move it to the side. You just don't mail that. Same thing here. They can come into this AP payment batch authorization and they can pick invoices that they do not want to approve. And if they don't approve them, they just uncheck them. They click approve. It'll approve the ones that are checked, and those will go into your EFT batch. So it's that level of authorization that occurs just to make sure you're not sending money out that they're not ready to send out now. A lot of banks will have up on their portal, they'll have another approval screen that allows you to go in and double check to make sure that what you've sent up is what you want to pay. Some people use the EFT authorization form to send those up, or they'll just go out onto the portal and do it, because there's usually somebody, a controller or somebody higher up that has that approval authority to make sure that what is actually leaving the bank account is what you want to leave the bank account. And then when that's done, it'll say ready to export. You'll run the ready to export button. It'll create the file. That's this file here. And then when you do this, generate EFT and post payments, it creates the output file that you're going to upload to the bank. It'll post the AP payments, and then it can generate the remittance advice for the vendor. The remittance advice for the vendor, if you're using that, it'll show you what you paid, the amount you paid, and it'll show what invoices are on those. And that's generated. It's a report within Made to Manage. It's RP Remit, I believe is what it's called. And it'll go out and it'll do that automatically. If you have something like Zetadocs or whatever, you can set it up to automatically email those out to your vendors so that they get it automatically once the process is done. And then, of course, if for some reason the file gets corrupted or it didn't save to where you wanted it to, any type thing like that, you can come up here, click on Regenerate EFT File, and it'll let you regenerate that file. It doesn't do any AP postings because they're already done. It just recreates the file. And then if for some reason you want to go back and void an EFT batch, you can always do that. You can do individual payments on the batch by clicking the vendor number in the invoice, or you can void the whole batch. When you void it out, it'll return the invoices back to their unpaid status and then void out the payment. So it's runs through real nice. I love the EFT functionality. EFT and data archiving are probably two favorite things in 751. But that's all I got. So
Well, I have
kind
some
of ran.
questions for you.
Yeah, I ran through that pretty quick, so we have time for questions.
You're all good. So, one is, how long do you suggest to keep backups? 7+ days before you overwrite.
Um, it depends on the type of backups you're talking about. If you're talking SQL backups, I usually recommend that's 3 or 4 days for the immediate restore on the server. Off-site backups, that depends on what you're backing up and what kind of history you want to keep. For made to manage, I'd recommend probably 7 days. For other files that you may need to want to keep, so some people go 30 days. But I would think, typically for made to manage, I would think 7 days. The catch with ransomware and why you'd probably want to go 30 days is because you don't know when ransomware got loaded on your system.
Correct. What I have seen, Ken, this is Jim, what I have seen is some people will have ransomware that goes out there and will sit on your system for a while until it gets executed with a day plan. And that could be 6, 7 days, 8 days later. So I
Yeah.
have seen.
So I would probably recommend having, getting the base and just hold a base backup from, once you get it set up, everything's set up, especially with made to manage. Once you get it set up, get that and take that off somewhere. And then all your other files in that, you may want to, keep like 4 weeks for the backups on a Saturday and then at least 14 days, just of your full system.
Okay.
It's challenging. Yeah, backup strategies are always fun. You want to make sure that you go in, like an insurance policy, you want to make sure you go in and you're getting everything that you're adding.
All right. And then another question is, can you archive just part numbers?
Yes and no. Well, no. You have to go in and archive the shippers, sales orders, anywhere that part number resides on the document. Those have to be archived before you can get rid of the master record.
Okay. And then if the EFT fails, is there a way to find exactly what failed?
Yes and no. It'll give you an error message, and sometimes the error message can be a little vague. It'll tell you a string can't be truncated. It could be a value is not correct. Typically, that's because somebody went into the vendor record and the account number and typed in an account name versus their account number. It's usually something like that that causes it. You would have to look into the file. You'd have to actually go into the tables typically and see what that is. You don't see that a lot. It's usually a one-off. Typically, if your account numbers and routing numbers are correct, you don't really run into an issue.
Okay. If you guys have questions about anything made to manage related, we are going to switch over so any of our consultants can answer if you guys have, technical questions, customizations questions. I'm going to go ahead and flip back to our contact screen so you guys can see that. And we will go ahead and move into questions for you guys. If you have any, we have some of you who know we do have Ken on here, we have Ray, and we also have Susan on here as well. So if you guys have questions for them that you would like answered, free advice from all of our consultants, to know anything with your systems, we'd be happy to help.
And while we're waiting for those questions to come in, remember, you guys can always come out to our website anytime and ask us questions. Normally, we don't charge for little quick questions you guys ask us. I always tease and joke. We're the anti-app team. My thing is you guys go ahead and ask us questions. We like to even set up meetings with you and your teams. If you guys want to get projects completed, things like that, we don't charge for those meetings, just to talk to you and figure out what has to get done. Again, this is Jim Castall, the president owner. I do want to thank everybody for today until those questions come in. We can't do this without you. So again, remember, if you guys have any ideas for our next user group meeting that we're probably going to have in September, October, please give us some ideas, and then Ken, Susan, Ray, Matt, Connie, all of our staff can be ready so we can start addressing some of those, maybe some of the things that you want to address, questions, answers, things like that.
All right. Well, I
So
do
I
have a
think-
question for our consultants. Where can they go to change a quote hard-coded message in a sales order?
Hard-coded on the report?
Just as hard-coded message in a sales order. Where can they change it?
It would depend where it's hard-coded at. It sounds like it's on the report. It would depend on the version of Made to Manage as well.
It's the sales document.
Yeah, but it depends on the version. If it's VFP or .NET on where you go, and of course the version of the SQL. Because if it's SQL 16 or below, you can do it from the RP Make screen and get to SSRS there, depending if you have rights to it. If it's in Visual FoxPro, then you got to go out to FoxPro and edit it. But is it actually hard coded, or is it pulling it from the notes field from CS? I think it's CS Sale. Is that right, Ray?
I am not sure I understand the question to begin with.
You got hard coded notes showing up on the sales order.
Okay, hard-coded notes on the sales order.
They
I
want
have
to know where they
seen
can
some where
change it.
I've seen some where they are very customized hard-coded notes and they're directly in those layouts as Ken was talking about.
Right.
They said it's not pulling from the notes. They put in here that Christine tried to help them find it, but they cannot locate where it's coming from.
Oh, okay. Well, we
I
can
would check
connect
on
and take a look
CS
at it.
Sale.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question we have is, do we have any information on how we can customize the INV screen for tariff IDs or another screen to be able to identify the part numbers that will require tariff?
That is a very popular question these days. I believe that you all will be getting an email. We're actually going to be sending an email out that is asking, okay, who's being impacted and how are you currently managing it? We are starting to look at how to put flags in place, and depending upon industry, my understanding is it can be different as to how you have to do it. So it's very simple to put a checkbox on the item master for us to do that, so that you can flag which ones, and then have that flag show on the sales order, but that there's still user who has to do something for it. So we're working to come up with some different solutions for that, but it's definitely not a simple solution.
So, Susan,
There's nothing simple about it.
I'm guessing that it's going to have to be a custom field for people to put things out there, and then probably a report that we're probably going to have to create for customers to say, hey, what was tariffed and where are those tariffs and so on, so they'll know where the numbers come from. Is that correct?
Someone made a
It all
note
depends.
saying manufacturing is just going to capture tariffs as part of total costs.
So some customers are wanting it grouped into their part number, their part costs. Others are wanting to add line items specific for tariffs to like their sales orders. So it all depends upon just what is needed by the finance groups in regards to that. We also have landed costs that could possibly be used to assist with that.
That would be an option. If you just wanted for reference sake, for the time being, you could use user-defined fields on the item master, just to throw a date in there or a character in there that says this is tariffed and the percentage. But I think eventually, if this keeps up, we're going to end up with a methodology to make something functional to transfer it over to a purchase order or such things.
Correct. I know Acumatica handles that. I was talking to Christine. I don't know if she's on here. Acumatica handles that. but they handle it in a different way, that they bring it all the way through beginning process all the way to the end, where I know Made to Manage does not, but with something that we can help, I think, build into it. Christine, are you there?
I am, sorry.
No problem.
So, yeah, so another way that can be handled for the tariffs is utilizing the landed cost functionality, because typically it's going to come from your purchases that you're doing. And Made to Manage does not handle landed cost very well, but it can be utilized. That's where, you know, Acumatica does handle the landed costs and actually will take that information and make it become part of your part cost, which is really what you want to do. You don't want a manual process. You'd love to have an automated process. So that's why we've been having multiple meetings lately to try to discuss with customers, right? How are they currently handling it, and what are they seeing, so that we can kind of come back with maybe an easy solution, and it may not fit everybody, but again, if it's a customization, then it could be customized to the circumstances. But we don't want it too elaborate, because again, we have no idea if these tariffs are going to be short-term or long-term, and the fluctuation with them. So we're just trying to, you know, as quickly as we can, gather the information and try to put something together, because Susan more than volunteered to do that customization.
Another question is, are vendors itemizing the tariff costs when they're billing, or are they just embedding it in the cost that they're passing on to the consumer?
It's a mix based
Yeah.
off of the handful that we've spoken to.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think it's early enough that we don't have enough data to make that decision, but.
Right.
Well, as someone pointed out that we talked to this, I think it was actually this week, tariffs have existed for a long time, and they have, this particular customer already dealt with tariffs. It's just that this new way that they're looking to come in to them, they're possibly going to have to do some changes, but
Right.
they were already embedding it into their part costs.
Right. As I was going to say, is most of them were embedded in the cost of the part, because the tariffs were not a large piece of it. Now, depending on where it's coming from, depends on, you know, the percentage and the dollars that are now invested in a tariff. So that's why we're getting a lot of outreach concerning it.
Yeah, it's like a fuel
It kind of
spike.
reminds. Go ahead.
I said it's like a fuel spike. You know, you get a fuel spike, they'll add a fuel surcharge.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, remember those
Yeah.
fuel surcharges from many years ago?
Yep.
Similar to that.
I have
Having
a
worked
question
in
for you guys
plastic.
not involving tariffs.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have a customer email address for accounting correspondences, i.e. invoices and statements? Currently, it seems there's only an email address for sales and marketing. I've had to manually change and add accounting emails to correspondence.
You can handle that by using either the contact information email or the address email. There's an email under both of those. The catch is you have to modify the reports, the report programs, to utilize the email address that you want to use on that particular document.
Okay.
And that's easily customizable. It's just, you gotta, you know, if you have somebody there who knows how to program in SQL, we can show them how to do that, and they can do it.
Well, it's also the age-old fight of who gets what field and who's responsible for, you know, where it gets to go.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
You can also add custom fields as well, and then do it that way too. So there's multiple ways to do it.
All right. This one is a kudos to Susan. It says, "Yay, Susan, for customization." So they thank you for all the work you've done for them.
Aw, thank you. Makes me feel good.
Well, where's the question?
You know, it's more of a statement.
Well, Susan, thank you. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ken. I thank all of you. And thank you, customers, for being out here. We had a great meeting today. We had over, how many, Jess? How many customers do we have on today?
About 30.
So that was fantastic today. So I have to say thank you so much. And we look forward also to our next one that we have in, like I said, September, October. So I thank everyone.
Yes.
Any other questions?
No, we don't. But if you guys have questions, you can email Jim. You can email Jim Cooey. You can email myself. You can always email the Made to Manage support. Also Christine or Ken or Susan, and we'll all come together and help you guys in any way that we can. So thank you everybody for today. Thank you for your participation, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, team. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.